Hello, welcome to Studio 122. I'm your host, Spencer James Nelson, and here with us we have Noah Nelson, who is
No relation, right?
no relation at all, who is the director of media for the school. Am I correct?
No, well, I'm vice president of media relations in charge of
President of
that
Media
department
Relations.
and the marketing department and for KETR.
Right. My apologies.
That's all right.
All right. So we also understand that you were a co-chairman for the Hall of Languages being renamed to Talbot Hall.
Well, I was the chairman.
The chairman. All right. So in that case, what can you tell us about that?
Well, ask me something specific. What would you like to know?
Basically, why did we choose to rename it to Talbot Hall?
Well, let's start with David Arlington Talbot, who was the person who is being honored by that name change. Dr. Talbot was the first African-American faculty member here at the university, beginning back in 1968. And you know, the university was only desegregated in, I think, 65. So he was one of the first black teachers here, actually. And I knew him because I was a student here in the early 70s. So I was familiar with Dr. Talbot, and he was a tremendous person. Had this big booming voice and this caring way about him, and all the students knew him, both black and white, because he was very generous with his time and with his wisdom. And so when they were thinking about honoring him in some way, the idea came from Dr. Keck, President Keck, that we name it that building in honor of David Arlington Talbot. And it just seemed to be an inspired decision.
So, from your perspective, how did you feel whenever you heard that it was being renamed to Dr. Talbot?
I thought it was great. I think something should have happened in honor of Dr. Talbot a long time ago because of the presence he had on this campus when he was here, and he died several years ago. But you know, like I said, he cared about students. He was one of those people that when you saw him coming, if you had a problem, you could go to him. And it's kind of a relationship in a way that I guess a lot of students wish they had with teachers. That's not so common as it was, you know, 40, 45 years ago, where you could actually, you know, talk to counselors and teachers about your problems, and they actually would, you know, give you some advice, and they cared. He was one of those kind of people.
All right. And then we also understand that you were there at the renaming as a speaker. What would you say your favorite part or most memorable part of their ceremony would be?
Well, I was the master of ceremonies for that, and Andrew Young, former Ambassador Andrew Young, who was the confidant and advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King. He's one of the last few of those lieutenants who were around Dr. Martin Luther King, is still alive, came to town. He had given a speech that morning at the Ferguson Hall auditorium, to a packed auditorium. He stuck around all day and was the kind of the guest of honor at that. So I think hearing Andrew Young, Ambassador Young, give that speech in the morning, and then give, you know, a few remarks in that renaming ceremony in the afternoon was kind of the highlight. Although I have to admit, because I was one of the people who helped design how that day was going to look, we were thinking about the music, and there was a song that popped into my head by singer Nina Simone. You know, "Feeling Good." It's a song called "Feeling Good," and I went to the music department and talked to their head of the department, David Scott, and I said, you know, is it possible that there's an arrangement that the chorale could sing called "Feeling Good"? And they found an arrangement that they could do for several voices, and I was kind of anticipating how that was going to sound. The day before, I went to the final rehearsal, and you know, I think the singer, the lead singer, Malik, who was on The Voice, he just knocked it out of the park. I mean, that to me was the part that that I remember in my head, but also just being around Andrew Young.
Right. If you're just now joining us, we are here with Vice President of Media Relations for the school, and also the chairman for the renaming of the Hall of Languages to what is now known as Talbot Hall. Thank you again for joining us, Noah. So with the hall having all these renovations, and all this history that goes into the more eastern side of the campus, what can you tell us about the history of the Hall of Languages?
It used to be the library. Many, many years ago. There are pictures in our library archives of when it looked different. That second and third floor that are there now, those weren't there. It used to kind of look like the New York Public Library. You'd walk in, and the ceiling went all the way up to the roof. And so it was a big kind of hall-like environment. If you look at it from the outside now, you see the big arched windows. Well, those used to be, what lit up the room, and there were tables that went from one end of the hall to the other. And so the building looked different on the inside. And by the time I got here, in the early 70s as a student, it looked the way it does right now. But that building is, it might have been built in the 30s, and so it was that old, maybe even older than that, and it hadn't been changed, since those renovations happened. And I think those happened sometime in the 60s, where they took the big hall-like arrangement and made it into classrooms, so that for space.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that all undergoing renovations, is there any future renovations that are in store for this campus within the next, say, 2-3 years maybe?
Well, a lot of things, and not only, with that building. I mean, that building is going to be renovated in 2 stages. That was stage 1, where they just kind of cleaned it up, basically, the lobby. But the plan is for, and I don't know if you can remember in your head what the building looks like. When you walk through the front door and keep walking, there's kind of a study area straight ahead of you, and what the plan is to knock out that wall that faces Stonewall Street and put a patio there so that you can walk out, and there may be even a coffee shop or something like right there.
That would be really
nice. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But they're building the finishing up the new dorms right now. That's going to add about 500 beds for freshmen, and that's going to be completed in the next few months. And the Nursing and Health Science Center is under construction right now too. So those are 2 big projects that are going on currently.
Mm-hmm. And then with the dedication going to Dr. Talbot, are we planning on renaming any other buildings coming up in the near future?
Not that I know of, although the name of the Health Science Center is still yet to be decided. And sometimes I guess they name residence halls after people, but there's been no plan yet to nail that down.
All right. Well, Noah, I just want to say thank you again for joining us on Studio 122. To all the viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. This has been Studio 122. I'm Spencer James Nelson.